She gave up her last memory of love to feed the forgotten, but what happened the next morning turned her heartbreak into a miracle for hundreds of voiceless souls. On the edge of Austin, Texas, tucked between overgrown fields and rusted mailboxes, stood a small, worn-down animal shelter named Hope Hollow Haven. It wasn't fancy. No digital donation pages, no viral videos, just one woman, a leaky roof, and over 75 stray dogs and cats she had rescued from the streets. Maggie Shaw, 38, had run the shelter for nearly a decade. A former nurse-turned-rescuer, she poured everything she had into the animals. Literally. By the first week of December, donations had stopped coming. The shelter's pantry was down to one bag of dog food, and the vet bills stacked like a wall. Still, every morning, Maggie walked pen to pen, humming to each animal, petting them gently. "I won't let you starve, I promise." That night, she stared at her drawer for a long time. Inside was the only item she had never touched since her divorce 6 years ago. Her wedding ring. She had once thought it held a future. Now, it was her last lifeline. The next morning, with tears in her eyes, Maggie walked into a pawn shop and sold it for $860. She didn't tell anyone. She just bought bags of kibble, canned food, and enough medicine to get them through the week. But fate was watching. Because someone else had walked into the shelter the same day, quietly, without a press team or bodyguards, a man in jeans and a hoodie. And the very next morning, a black SUV pulled up with a single note. "The animals of Hope Hollow Haven are now under my protection. Forever. Grant Whitmore. Whitmore Group Holdings." The billionaire had been there all along, watching, listening. And what he did next would shock the entire country. Maggie stood on the porch of her shelter in disbelief. The SUV hadn't just dropped off a note. It dropped off a full delivery truck, stacked with pallets of premium pet food, fresh bedding, crates of medical supplies, and brand new leashes still wrapped in plastic. She clutched the letter, hands shaking. Grant Whitmore. She'd heard the name on the news. Billionaire tech investor. Quiet. Private, often described as reclusive. A man who hated the spotlight, yet somehow had found his way to her forgotten corner of the world. Just as she turned toward the delivery driver to ask what was happening, she heard a calm voice behind her. "You sang to them." She turned around and saw him. A tall man in his 40s. Simple clothes, no watch, no bodyguard. Just eyes that had clearly seen loneliness before. "I was here yesterday," he said gently. "I watched from my car for a while. You didn't know I was there." Maggie blinked, trying to understand. Why would someone like you come here?" He smiled faintly. "Because my mother used to run a shelter just like this. She gave everything she had. The world never noticed, but I did." He pointed to the kennel closest to the gate, where a skinny old Labrador wagged its tail. "I saw you give him your lunch. I saw you pat every single head. And then I saw you come back from the pawn shop, wiping your face." Maggie looked down, ashamed. "I didn't do it to be noticed. I just didn't want them to go to sleep hungry." Grant stepped forward and handed her a folded paper. She opened it slowly. It was a full grant contract, signed and sealed, offering lifetime operational funding, including salaries, medical equipment, and an expansion plan for Hope Hollow Haven. Total gift value, $5.2 million. Maggie's knees buckled, and she had to grab the railing. "This is too much," she whispered. But Grant shook his head. "Number, you gave up a symbol of love. Let me give it back, in the form of something that loves you back." The transformation began immediately. Within 2 weeks, Hope Hollow Haven no longer looked like a forgotten corner of the city. The rusted gates were replaced with bright signage. The cracked floors were retiled, and insulation was installed for the harsh winter approaching. But what touched Maggie most wasn't the renovations. It was the names on the kennels. Each pen was now labeled, not just with the animal's name, but with a handwritten backstory printed beside it on a plaque. Lenny, found under a bridge, waited 3 days in the rain. Juno, abandoned at a truck stop, still smiles at everyone. Harper, born deaf, but hears love just fine. That was Grant's doing. I want visitors to remember where they came from, he'd told her. It's not just about feeding them, it's about honoring them. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the animals settled into clean beds with full bellies, Maggie and Grant walked the aisles together. You know, Maggie said quietly, I never asked why you care so much. Grant paused. My mom ran a shelter for 15 years in Arkansas. We lost her when I was 19. After she passed, I donated money to big rescues, sure, but they had staff and media. She never did. He looked at her, eyes soft. You reminded me of her, selfless, quiet, brave. When I saw you sell your ring, I realized something. That was love, not for a person, not for memories, but for something that couldn't speak back. Maggie swallowed the lump in her throat. I always thought love ended when he left, she admitted, but maybe it just changed forms. Grant smiled. Love never leaves. Sometimes it just learns how to bark. Months passed, but word of Maggie's story only grew stronger. The local paper ran it first, then the state, then national networks picked it up. Woman sells wedding ring to feed strays. Billionaire adopts her cause. Donations poured in, not just money, but supplies, blankets, even hand-drawn thank you cards from school kids who sent photos of their own rescued pets. But Maggie didn't let fame change her. She still walked pen to pen every morning, still hummed softly during feeding time, still knelt beside new arrivals and whispered, You're safe now. Hope Hollow Haven grew from a struggling shelter to a national symbol of compassion. It began partnering with other small, overlooked rescues across the country, under a new banner, the Ring Project, a movement honoring those who give everything, even what they love, to care for the voiceless. One spring morning, Grant returned with a small box in hand. Maggie raised an eyebrow. You better not be proposing, she joked. He chuckled. Not exactly. Inside the box was a delicate gold ring, not flashy but meaningful. On the inside, it was engraved, To the one who gave love away and found more in return. Maggie's hand trembled as she slipped it on. I thought I lost everything that day, she whispered. You didn't, Grant said softly. You just made room for everything else. 1 year later, a sculpture stood at the entrance of Hope Hollow Haven, a woman kneeling beside a stray dog, holding out a ring, not as a loss, but as an offering. Below it, etched in bronze, she gave up a ring and gained a family of hundreds. Because sometimes, love doesn't come back through the person who left. It comes back through paw prints, second chances, and strangers who believe in the magic of quiet sacrifice.